Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. I hope that you're having a wonderful day. If you're new here, my name is Neve and it would mean the world to me if you would stick around. So today's video is my April wrap up and I'm trying to film it making the most of the natural light. So if this video steadily changes lighting as we go, it's because I've had to up the ring light because the sun has set much faster than I think it will. And the reason that I'm worried about that happening is this month has been an interesting reading month. I basically read a book and a half probably in the first week of April, and then I didn't touch a book until the 21st or something. It was quite a way into the month, and then in the past week or so, probably about a week, I've read like a machine. So this is what we've got to get through. In this video. So yeah, let's hope there's still sunlight by the end of it. Before I get started properly talking about books, I wanted to show you guys my necklace because I am literally in love with it. I think it's opalite. My girlfriend brought it back from her holiday over Easter, and she has the moon. And I love it, and I had to show it off. So this video probably is going to be quite long, so if you would like to pause this and go and get yourself a beverage, I would recommend that, or some snacks. I have a cup of tea here, and let's not stall any longer, or else we'll literally be here forever. Okay, so the first book that I read this month is, I've not organised them in a very helpful way, but the first book that I read in April was The Memory of Babel by Christelle de Beau. This is the third book in the Mirror Visitor series. Again, I did not read this copy. I read my girlfriend's copy, which is why this looks like it's not been touched, because it hasn't. And I very much enjoyed this. I'm pretty sure I gave this one 4 stars. I can't remember exactly what I rated it, but enjoyed it. I've enjoyed all of the books in this series immensely so far, although I will say that I still think the second one is my favourite, but I've still got the last one to go, so that could change. This book was very interesting because there seems to be like a trend in this book series of Ophelia having to play the part of someone other than herself. And obviously there's like a deeper meaning to it and it connects to her ability to travel, whatever, right? But this one was really interesting because like she did have to do it, but she also like didn't have to do it, like, you get what I mean? So that was quite interesting because it was like no one really was forcing this on her. She'd sort of like decided to go on this mission herself, and that made it like kind of more enjoyable because it was like, okay, she's doing this because she believes in the end goal, and like that was quite fun. I will say, not happy about the lack of Thorn in this book. I was like, right, well, you know, he's gonna appear like soon, surely. He did not appear soon. I was unamused by that, because like the last book, the second one, I need to stop touching my hair, the second one like ended on a bit of a big moment and he just disappeared, and I thought, well, you know, surely they're not going to make us wait a whole book to see him again. Close. Too close for my liking. But when he did appear, I was quite happy about it, so I'm very excited to read the fourth one. But I'm going to be very sad, I think, when I read the fourth one, because then that's it done. And I don't know if I'm ready for it to be over yet. But anyway, definitely enjoyed this, but do think the second one probably is my favourite so far. The next book that I read in April was Kingdom of the Wicked by Derek Landy. This is the 7th Skullduggery Pleasant novel. I will admit I did think I would read more of them in April than I did, but oh well. One is good enough. Also, it's quite chunky, so I'll take it. I think this is about 600 pages. I think it's like 602 or something ridiculous like that. Like, you know, close to being exactly 600. This was good. Not my favourite, but I think that was my fault because this is the book that I read about half of and then didn't touch a book for like 3 weeks. So I think like I sort of took myself out of it as opposed to it being any reflection of Derek Landy's writing ability. I think that not touching a book for weeks at a time harms your immersion slightly. So I will not hold that against the book itself. I will hold that against myself. But yes, the plot of this one was quite interesting. But I almost felt like the parts of the book that really intrigued me were the parts that had like lesser focus, and some of the things I was less invested in were like the things that got more like page time or screen time, you know what I mean. So that was a little bit frustrating. I kind of wish we got to see more of the people who didn't previously have magic coping with having magic out with the kind of 4 teenagers who basically are dicks about it. But again, it was very interesting to see the return of Darkess. I'm getting a little bit frustrated with the Darkess plotline at the moment because I feel like she's been awfully convenient for someone who's bad. Like I feel that there's not quite been consequences that are equal to the level of fear that Derek Landy is trying to build up for us to see Valkyrie feeling about it. Like I feel like for how panicky she is about what Darkess is ultimately going to cause, so far she's just kind of showed up and been an awfully convenient weapon and then fucked off again. So I'm hoping in the next couple of books that is more of the consequences are a bit more interesting. I think if it continues on the way it's continuing on with that plotline, I'm going to start getting a bit agitated. So I'm hoping it doesn't.
Okay, so editing leave here quickly to say that I definitely think the whole Darkess being a convenient weapon thing has been done on purpose so that there'll be like a point of like reckoning or no return. Like I definitely think that Derek Landy knows what he's doing. I'm just impatient and therefore slightly frustrated. But I'm sure it'll all make sense in the books that come up. I just have the patience of a toddler, so I'm like, oh no, what am I along?
However, there is a storyline that's been building like all through the books that I've been waiting to see how it turns out, and it kicked off getting really interesting at the very, very end of this book, and I'm so excited to see how it plays out in the next one. So next month's wrap up, May's wrap up, keep your eyes open because I'm sure I will have many things to say about that plotline. Anyway, there you go. Skullduggery Pleasant 7. I'm not half getting through these books. The next book that I read in the month of April was I Was Born for This by Alice Oseman. This was the only novel of Alice Oseman's that I hadn't read yet. I really enjoyed this. It's probably my second favourite Alice Oseman novel. I'm trying to go through the ranking in my head. My favourite by far and wide is Radio Silence, but I really enjoyed this. I liked that this was another book where there was romance plots in it, but the focus of the relationship didn't really have anything to do with romance. That was really nice. I love a good romance novel, but sometimes I feel like, especially within the YA genre, there's like a really weird like forced importance of teenage romance, and it's really nice to see an author write books that don't have that and that are really focused on just like all different kinds of relationships, strong friendships, and like those kind of bonds. It's always very interesting, and in the case of Alice Oseman novels, always very fulfilling. I had a great time with this. I liked what this book had to say about fame, especially young people being famous, who like maybe don't know what they're getting into, even if they think they know what they're getting into, and sort of like why there's such a price for artists to pay to be able to like live a life that allows them to create art. You know what I mean. So that was really interesting. There wasn't really a character in this book who I didn't like, but there were definitely character arcs that I found more enjoyable. I really liked Jimmy's, like this is a dual POV novel, so like half of the chapters are written from his perspective, and I really enjoyed that, but it was a particularly interesting perspective to read from, because I found myself duly being frustrated at other characters being annoyed at him, and also like kind of getting why his behaviour was frustrating. So it was just like an interesting like mindset that I got myself into whilst I was reading this book that I quite enjoyed. I read this book in a couple of hours. It was all in the one day. This was the book that kicked off my machine reading sprint of the last week, and I think it was a good place to start. You're probably going to find as we go through this video I'm going to have less and less to say about the books, because I read all of the books that are coming so quickly that I'm surprised I remember that I read them, if I'm being honest. The next book that I read was The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary. I loved this book. I genuinely loved this book. I didn't think I was going to love this book. I thought, oh yeah, like, you know, I mostly read queer romances, so I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be like invested in this straight couple. But I genuinely loved it, because it's like kind of a rom-com, and if you've been here for a while you know I am an absolute sucker for a rom-com. Love them. But it's like the stakes out with the rom-com are quite high, so you get this like nice grounded life for the rom-com to be built off of, and so much fun. I also the main male character in this book is a palliative care nurse, right? And I was like, oh, I text my partner and I said to my mum as I was starting reading it, like, this man's job is going to destroy me. Like, someone's going to die and I'm not going to handle it. And I was thankfully wrong, because I thought that one of the characters that he was a nurse for was going to die, and it would have been one of those deaths that's like particularly cruel to think about. And luckily she did not. She recovered. And I was very grateful for that, because I don't know if I could have taken that one. But I loved this. I thought the way that it discussed recovery from previous domestic abuse was really interesting. I think it was done very sensitively. I think the two characters in this made a genuinely good couple, and that I could like see why they liked each other. And also the guy, Leon, his perspective, the chapters that are written from his perspective are written like a really interesting tone and like form. It's almost like reading someone's like notes app on their phone, like shorthand. Like there's no more words are used than are had, like that have to be used. It was very interesting and I really liked it, and I particularly liked how much of a contrast it held to both the notes that he writes Tiffy, and also Tiffy's perspective chapters, which are much more personal and informal, and the way you would expect someone to like tell a story, whereas I feel like Leon's was more probably actually how people make notes quickly in their head, if that makes sense. And that was really interesting. The whole thing of this I was just quite impressed by, and I ended up enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would, so I'll take that as a win. The next book that I read in this month was Girl Meets Boy by Ali Smith. I had no idea what this book was about, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. I knew it was a retelling or inspired by part of Ovid's Metamorphoses, but I didn't know which part, and I didn't know like how close to this, like you know, like some Greek myth retellings are still set like in, Ovid is not Greek. I'm talking too quickly for my brain to catch up, but like, you know, some Greek myth retellings or Roman myth retellings are still set in the time and place of the actual myth. It's just like a slightly different perspective. This is not the case. This is set in modern Inverness. I think it's Inverness, somewhere in Scotland, which, first of all, that surprised me. I didn't know that was coming. I was like, oh, they're Scottish. And it's also about lesbians, which I didn't know either, which was a pleasant surprise. Other than that, though, this book kind of falls in a very average place for me. But I think in this case, it's not due to any sort of like actual fault in the writing or of the authors. It just is that this is probably not quite to my taste. I feel bad making statements about the book that are like quality, like about the quality, because I don't actually know if it's a very good book, because it just was a book that wasn't to my taste. And I think sometimes you have to be aware of the differences. Like, this was just not for me, as opposed to being something I read and went, oh, this is bad. That wasn't the case at all. It just was very poetic, and it played with time and reality in a way that sometimes was really interesting, but sometimes just confused me. And I just wasn't a huge fan of that. Although I reckon that there are people who probably absolutely love that. Like, there's definitely a very large audience for this. I just was not in that audience. Also, I think I read it too quickly. I don't think that this is a book that it's very small, so it's obviously not meant to take you forever, but I think I read it too quickly, and that didn't make it any less confusing when they started to play about with time and stuff. So there's that. The next book that I read in the month of April was Hani and Ishu's Guide to Fake Dating by Adiba Jagirdar. I hope I've said that right. I really enjoyed this book. I mean, I've definitely still read like quite a bit of YA this year, but it's been YA fantasy, which is a genre I've never really touched before, which means things like YA romance and contemporary YA novels, coming of age, that sort of thing, have been put on the back burner for a bit, and it was really pleasant to come back to it. I feel like when I started reading like teen and YA novels, I hadn't developed like what my taste was, and I didn't know a lot about myself either, so I feel like I sort of wasted time reading just like whatever anyone else was reading. And it's very pleasant as and someone in their late teens becoming an adult to read the YA novels that are like to my taste, to know what I want to read and be able to read it and like get that satisfaction that I could have been having when I was 14 but just didn't quite know enough about myself to go looking for. And this is a good example of this. It is an adorable sapphic fake dating AU, and it was just fun. There were stakes. Again, it was a romance book that had elements of the characters' lives outside of the romance that were interesting and that you wanted to follow as well, which I always quite enjoy. I think sometimes when a book is like wholly and solely devoted to the romance and nothing else, I'm kind of like, okay, but like these people must have lives. Like, they must have some sort of life. And I feel like this struck a good balance between focusing on the romance and the development of their relationship, and also like other aspects of their lives that were clearly important. We got to delve into their cultures and how they interact with each other and the elements of them that are separate. There were some fun looks into faith and how being a person of faith can impact other areas of your life and how difficult it can be to be open about and respected for your faith. It was all very interesting. I just genuinely enjoyed this. It was sweet. The relationship was cute. I was happy for them. I was rooting for them. It was a nice read, and again, I read it very quickly. The next book that I read in the month of April is Less by Andrew Sean Greer. This book is about a writer who's not a very successful writer, whose ex-boyfriend, or ex-lover probably is a more accurate term, invites him to his wedding, and he panics and just accepts every invitation to anything he's been invited to for the next like 6 months, and just like cuts about the world doing stuff to try and not have to think about or go to this wedding. And it was good. It wasn't my favourite thing that I read this month. It was maybe like a 3.5 star read for me, but it was enjoyable. There were some really interesting takes on the mindset of authors and the lifestyle of creatives, and there were some interesting discussions about queerness and how queer people's attitudes about life have changed as time has passed. How weird it feels to be a gay man in the generation that this man was in, because he was sort of like in the generation after the generation that was largely lost to the AIDS crisis. So he was one of the first people that he knew to age past like 40. So that was like a whole undiscovered territory that was like really anxiety inducing for him, because he didn't know any other queer people who were his age. And that was quite scary, and it was really interesting to see how that was tackled. It wasn't something that was like dealt with like a lot of seriousness or like heaviness, but it was like an interesting discussion that was like peppered throughout the novel that I quite enjoyed. And also like it was just fun to read about this really ridiculous, anxious, kind of annoying man be a bit neurotic and just travel the world hoping for the best, really. Like he just kind of floats like about the place, and like it's just like, I guess I'll do this then. Yeah, I'll interview this guy. Yeah, I'll teach this class. Like, just sort of wings it, and sometimes it goes quite well and sometimes it doesn't, and all of the time it's vaguely amusing, at least, because it's just kind of like, what are you doing? What are you doing, Arthur? Like, come on. But it was a nice way to spend some time. It was a good size, I think, for what it was. I think if it had been any longer, I would have maybe been like, I can't be bothered with this anymore. But it's like just what it needed to be, I think, and I enjoyed it. And it's always nice to read a queer story from a slightly different perspective than I usually read. And this, I think, is one of the first queer novels I've ever read from like the perspective of like a middle-aged queer person. I think this guy, the whole thing is he's about to turn 50, so that was really interesting perspective to read from. I feel like I definitely took some stuff from it that I hadn't really thought about before. And yeah, the next book that I read this month was The Switch by Beth O'Leary. As you can tell, the flat share went so successfully that I went hunting through my local charity shops for this, because I was like, I want it now. And I found it. I took my gran with me, and I'm convinced she is a charity shop good luck charm, because I never have the kind of luck that I had that day in the charity shop. I got this for 50p, I got The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon for 50p, I got Miriam Margolyes's memoir for like £1. It was just like an insanely successful charity shop book haul, and I never have that level of success, so I'm thanking my gran. But yeah, the next book I read was The Switch by Beth O'Leary, and this follows a woman called Eileen who swaps lives with her granny. Fantastic. So her granny goes and lives her very like city London life, and she cuts about her granny's wee village and like plans the village fair and the neighborhood watch, and she like walks a dog. And it was just brilliant. It was so much funnier than I was expecting it to be. And it was like genuinely, like, the granny in this is maybe my favourite woman ever. Like, I fell genuinely head over heels in love with this woman. She was just like, I don't know, like a total force to be reckoned with in like such an entertaining way. She just like went to London and she was like, yeah, okay, sign me up for the dating apps. Started this like rendezvous with this actor, and I was like, you go, Eileen, because they're both called Eileen. I was like, you go, Eileen, you have your late in life love affair. She just like whips all these people's lives into shape, and she's like, get with the program. And I'm like, yes, Eileen, get with the program. It was fantastic. There obviously like are romance subplots in this, and I enjoyed all of them. It was just fun, and like just watching two characters be put in environments that clearly are not like their comfort zones, and watch them just kind of like try and get through it was like really nice. There's also like a subplot of the family have recently lost someone in the last year or so, and it's clearly having like a large effect on all of the members of the family, but also their relationships to each other. And it was so fulfilling to watch them be able to like mend those relationships as the book progressed, because like I think to have known what they've lost, and if they hadn't been able to gain the relationships back, it would have been absolutely heartbreaking to watch them lose any more. So I'm glad that they fixed that, and I just enjoyed this. Beth O'Leary writes such fun characters, and it's been such a good time. I am very much putting the road trip right up, as far up my TBR as I can get it. And also she's literally just released a new book called The No Show, which I absolutely will also be reading ASAP, although I might wait for that one to come out in paperback because I don't really like reading hardbacks. So I might just make myself hold my horses until the paperback comes out. The next read for April, I'm going to hold this up, which is a collection of Harold Pinter plays, but I actually only read one. And the one that I read was The Dumb Waiter, which follows two hitmen waiting to be given instructions on their next assignment, and neither of them has a clue like what's going to happen. It is a piece of absurdist theatre. It's ridiculous, it's funny, it's dark, because like you don't really know they're hitmen until near the end, and then you're like, oh right, they're killing folk, right, okay. And it was just fun. They have such an interesting back and forth relationship. This is a play that I've seen people perform before and thoroughly enjoyed watching it on stage. I gave reading it a 3 because I just think plays are never as good when you read them as they are when you see them. But my reading experience was definitely enhanced by the fact that I could like hear the voices of the people that I've watched do it before, so I was like getting like a slight element of performance whilst I was reading it, and I really enjoyed that. I'm very intrigued to read more Pinter. It's definitely something I should have done before now, but I'm intrigued to see how I feel about the rest of his stuff, and it was very nice to revisit this play and finally read it in full because I've never read all of it before. Last up for the month of April is Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. This is the first John Green book I've read since I think I was 13, so it's been almost 6 years, and it was very interesting. This was a good book. It was a very good book. It was better than I thought it would be. I was like pleasantly surprised by my enjoyment of the novel, the plot, things like that. I've tried to read a John Green book last year, and I DNF'd it because I just didn't like the way the characters were written, and I was like really worried I would have the same problem with this one, but I didn't. It was just like daft teenagers, and I enjoyed that. It was a very good book. However, I don't know that it was a good book for me, in the sense that the main character in this novel, Asa, has OCD, and the way her OCD manifests is with anxiety about bacteria and microbes, and infection and that kind of stuff, and I wasn't expecting that. I thought it was going to be not that. I thought that the way the vibe I'd gotten from reviews of the book were that the OCD was going to manifest slightly differently. And as a person who has pretty severe health anxiety, I'm not convinced that this was the healthiest for my brain. But I didn't know that that was going to be like an element before I went in, so it's not affected my opinion of the book. It just might have long-term effects on my psyche. We'll wait and find out. I'm hoping not, because I do not need any more illnesses to be worried about. Yeah, I'm hoping I get over that one. I'm hoping that none of her thought spirals have dug a hole anywhere in here, but we'll see. Otherwise, it was a very good book. I think that the mental health issues were written with a lot of sensitivity and empathy, and very clearly was not coming from someone who had no knowledge or respect or anything like that, which I think sometimes definitely can be the case with YA novels in particular. So it was really refreshing to read a novel about a teenager struggling with their mental health that was written with like genuine respect and empathy for what that struggle is like. And the sort of like romance element, I really enjoyed that they didn't follow like the and everything was amazing and we all lived happily ever after, blah blah, like, because sometimes that just isn't realistic, and it was really nice to like explore a different kind of relationship and a different outcome to a relationship, and how sometimes like that's okay too, and like there can be a satisfaction in that and there can be a peace in that, and that was very enjoyable. And yeah, Turtles All the Way Down by John Green is a very good book, which I think they're currently filming the movie adaptation of. I follow John Green on TikTok, and I think he's been very excitedly posting about the fact that they're filming. So maybe I'll watch the movie. We'll wait and see what effect the books had on me long term before I say if I'm going to do the movie. The other thing that I have started reading this month but have not finished is The Sign of Four by Arthur Conan Doyle. This is a Sherlock Holmes story. My girlfriend also brought me this back from Ireland because I am one of those very insufferable people who talk way too much about BBC Sherlock. I'll accept the criticism. So she brought that back from a little bookstore in Dublin, and I'm about halfway through it. I'll probably finish it like tomorrow or something. And I'm also currently reading The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon, but I've only just started it, so that will definitely be in next month's wrap up. I hope that you enjoyed hearing me talk about books for this month. If you did, feel free to like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. Please comment below and tell me what your favourite thing that you read this month is. Oh, I need to stop touching my hair, I'm sorry. What your least favourite thing that you read this month is. I will see you very soon. Have a lovely rest of your day. Bye bye.